This episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast is sponsored by Trellance Cooperative Holdings Incorporated. Trellance is the parent company behind some of the most trusted credit union tech providers, such as Rise Analytics, ProBridge, and Optiri. By providing tech to credit unions and investing in new solutions, Trellance aims to create growth opportunities for the entire industry and to empower credit unions to embrace innovative new technology. Learn more at trellance.com.
Welcome to the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com.
And I'm Jill Nowacki, founder and CEO of Zealyst.
This season, we've been exploring what it means to lead with purpose. And today we're talking about opportunity. Opportunity is an interesting word in leadership because it can sound like something that just shows up. But so often the biggest opportunities are the ones we create. They come from being willing to make a move, try something different, see potential where other people might see uncertainty, and then actually do something with it.
And our guest today has certainly had plenty of opportunity over the past year. And from the outside looking in, she's thriving through a lot of opportunities that she's really created. Danielle Milner is the CEO of First Responders Credit Union in Boston, Massachusetts. Danielle, welcome to the CUInsight Experience.
Oh my gosh, has it ever been a better time to be with the two of you than right now? Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so giddy about spending time with the two of you.
We're appreciate you being here. So, Danielle, you've had quite the past year. So when you look back over the past year, what surprised you most about the opportunities that have opened up for you? And I guess, what have they taught you about yourself as a leader? We've talked to a lot of people over the years that have been kind of in that first year of being a CEO at a new credit union. So I always love to kind of take that step back over the past 12 months. Life's changed.
Yeah, probably for you both too. I mean, same and back to you. But I think, part of where I feel like I've probably learned the most about myself. So we made a move from Michigan, which has been my home my entire life, right? And making this move to an incredible city, Boston. And I remember when Jill and I were talking about that the first time, and sort of when I started to explore what it would mean to be a CEO and where that would be, and getting all the great questions about, is there a part of the country where you think you'd really like to be? And this, great city sort of popped up that if you talk to, 10 people, I find that 4 of them will tell you it's their favorite city to go to, right? And so beyond that, though, I think the opportunity to be a part of something really special. I say this with such great pride, but Boston firefighters were the first in the country. Boston police were the first in the country. And so talk about a lot of pressure to walk into a credit union, who, by the way, is performing very well financially, and to think about what pressure exists in that was a lot, I think, for me and my family to say, is this a challenge I'm really up for? Is it you start to do some straight talk with yourself, right? Is this something that I really can do? And I am just so happy to be here. And I've learned that is maybe not as hard as I thought it would be to find my place here in Boston. I think that's probably been my biggest lesson. This group and the people around me are really, really incredible. And they've wrapped their arms around me in a really big way. I feel very special about that. I'll tell you a quick story. Can I tell you a quick story? I know we're just...
Absolutely.
My mom came to visit me, and she was supposed to be here for 4 days. And she ended up being here for 4 weeks because she broke her hip the first that she was with me. We walked into my apartment the first night after dinner, and she fell and broke her hip. And that night we were in the emergency room and so on and so forth. She had to have surgery. She got lucky, best hip surgeon in the country, operated on her. But I'll tell you what happened here. My board started making calls on my behalf to people they knew who were working at the hospital. My team started delivering meals to our room. The next day, I had Diet Coke and Red Bull waiting for me in my mom's hospital room. And I had only been here at that point about 3 weeks. And so I really underestimated how close I think I would become to the people who worked here in such a short period of time. I feel like you probably have some of those same experiences. There's people that you meet from day one who are just wrap their arms around you, and it makes all of the challenge and all of the doubt sort of go away.
And I love that so much because I did have a chance to get to know your team a little bit as we went through the process of finding their next CEO. And, they really cared about who that person would be coming in. And so it's a wonderful thing that match was so aligned that they were able to give you that love as quick as when you came in. And I know it's also a reflection of the care that you've shown for them as humans too. And I think it's just a really incredible leadership trait that you've brought in to them as well.
Well, tell me though, because there have been people that you've chosen to do business with because of who they showed you they were, right? And so when you think about those people in your lives, like what are the kind of the qualities that you look for in who you want to do business with? Because you both get chances to say no too, right? Like you're like, no, that's not what I want. That is not what I'm looking for. And I think sometimes it can feel like a lot of pressure to say yes to an opportunity. And maybe the harder decision is saying no sometimes.
We've talked about this many times on the podcast. I love saying no. So, and Jill loves saying yes. So it's
I will say though, what I've learned on that, like of who do you say yes as far as like who you're doing business with and how do you, because it is, Randy and I have very different kinds of business, but we might share some of the same clients, right? Or the same, like from that side, we work with a lot of the same people, but in very different ways. And I think that, my career has been interesting because as a league president, you work with who you're told to work with. Like if they're your credit union, if they're in your state, they're your member. And it doesn't matter if you are aligned with the way they do business or the way they treat their team or anything like that. Like they're yours. It's defined. That's who you get. As a consultant, it is not necessarily that way. And there's a lot of, at Humanity, we had DEI in the name that often kind of created the way clients might choose us too. They might self-select out if they weren't aligned with those values. At Zealyst, I have more autonomy, more authority, because I have ownership. And so I really get to be selective about like, who do we work with and who don't we work with? And to that point that Randy's making about like, I say yes to everything. Like on the first impression, it would be hard for me to be like, oh, you're not one of our clients because I'm like, well, everybody has a chance, right? Maybe I just don't know you well enough yet. But I think what it comes down to is we can read authenticity in people and you can accept. So you walking into that credit union and just being human with the team probably made such a difference. And certainly when I'm choosing a client, if they're going to be authentic and human with me, I know we can get into the good stuff and really like work through anything that may come up. If I get from them like a solid veneer or like a shield of armor, it makes me nervous about what if everything doesn't go exactly to plan at some point. Like, will you be honest with me? Will we be able to talk through this? And even from a candidate perspective, like if you're giving me something that doesn't feel authentic, when does this blow up during the search process?
It's funny you said authenticity because I think that was the word that was running through my head as well over the now almost 2 decades of CUInsight is I know there are certain partners in the industry that I have absolutely loved working with for many, many years. And it tends to be that type of relationship where we're all being authentic and aligned in what our values and our goals are, even though we might be in different organizations.
Yes.
And when those don't align, it may not be a great fit. That's something to me, I will say with time and maturity is easier to define and also easier to go, it's okay if we can't work together, right? Like if we don't fit, doesn't mean you're a bad person, just means we're not a good fit and we're not going to have a good experience afterwards. And I think that's something over time that I had to learn was instead of saying, yes, we need the business or we need whatever it happens to be, to say, oh no, but this doesn't, 12 months later, does this end well? And if you can feel that in the beginning, oof, you know what? It might be better to take the pass. And that's a nice position to be in, quite honestly.
It's one of those things I think that you sense sort of from the beginning. I think maybe one of you said that you sense from the beginning whether you're getting the whole self or you're getting elements of the self. And I think it can be scary sometimes as a new person sort of walking into the room, right, to be the whole self. And it's scary for the people. I know it was scary for this team when I walked into the boardroom the first time. I remember that first day. So quiet.
There's something I'd love to ask you and then before we move on to being the newer CEO, right? But was there something coming in? Because I think over the years of doing this podcast, that idea of when you get the CEO gig, you ask for advice, you get advice from others. And often that advice is until you're in the seat, you don't really know. It doesn't matter how many boardrooms you've been in or, how many meetings you've been through or if you've been on the senior team. Were there any expectations that you had? And as maybe people who've done work on themselves, we know expectations can be a dangerous thing. But were there any expectations that you had walking in that were just completely opposite from what actually happened in reality once you were in the chair?
I'll say I probably have over-relied on my enthusiasm to carry me through in a lot of rooms. And I say that that is genuinely who I am and who I show up as. And I didn't realize how much that was really a part of me and thought, well, if I just provide context and go in there and as myself and we have this inspiring vision that we're creating together, or even the fact that I didn't know a lot of what I wasn't going to know, I think sometimes I still had to prove myself to everybody in the room, which is important. I want to say, and it was important to them, but it should have been important to me too, right? I think I was on this Young Professionals panel this week, and one of the questions they asked me is you've already gotten there, you're there, right? You're the CEO and you are there now. So now what keeps you motivated? And I'm I'd still like a job in a couple of months, this. It's never over. But I think constantly proving yourself is something that I feel, and I consider it a privilege. It's not a burden. It's a privilege, and probably over-relied on inspiration and enthusiasm to maybe carry me too far of the way. I haven't really thought much about that. The other part I would say is I don't know that everyone always articulates or can articulate what their expectations are of you.
Can't read minds, right? So. But Jill, you've transitioned over the past few months too. Has there been, you mentioned it earlier, now you have more control, you have ownership. Were there any expectations over the past couple months? Because I've seen some in you where you've recently been I feel lighter. I don't think you expected that to be there, but is there anything over the past few months that you've been that didn't live up to expectations, good or bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've been incredibly fortunate that since 2013, I've served in a CEO role, and I've been in a relationship where I've worked for boards of directors. So, and then even before that, I think you both know, well, Randy, he's your best friend with the diving, but you both know Mark Zook pretty well. I think Danielle and Mark are have served through CUInsight together, and Mark is also not an incredibly, I don't think anyone would ever describe Mark as a micromanager. And so for my entire adult career, I've never, and y'all know Tracy too, who I work with, she's my first boss. I haven't had that experience to really be, I've had a ton of autonomy throughout my whole career is I think what I'm trying to get to. And so I didn't expect it to feel that much different when I owned the business versus all these other roles I've had. And I have seen a difference in being accountable to yourself and your own goals and your own ideas versus those that are being set by someone else from that side of it. And so that surprised me because, and clearly I still work with people. I have clients who have expectations of me. It's not like I don't have expectations, but that ability to really just be in that place where, so I didn't know you were going to ask me this question, and I'm doing that thing where as an extrovert, you figure out what you're going to say after you actually say it. So here's what I'm getting to on this is that I didn't expect that I would have to, and that I would be able to truly trust myself as much as I have in this ownership seat. I didn't realize how much I had been relying on, even if it was in my own head, the expectations I thought others had of me, the expectations I thought my board had of me, the expectations I thought my boss had of me in those other roles. And now there isn't anybody else who I can credit or blame for whatever expectations are there. They all live in me. And so I think that I didn't realize I would feel both that responsibility and that gift of being the one who sets the expectations from that side of it.
Yeah. And you can take that to an extreme, right? Like that depending on how driven you are and what your work-life balance looks like. And that can be an extremism if you let it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Balance is important.
So Danielle, you've been at this credit union stuff for a while now. You've had a lot of chances to move forward. You've had chances to work at many different organizations as you've moved through it. I'd say you're moving into, I'm still going to say it's mid-career level, though. I think you've got a long runway ahead of you still. And with that, how do you see opportunity differently today than earlier in your career?
We touched on this, I think, earlier. And I'll say you're right. I've been so privileged to be able to work for lots of different types of people, a lot of them, and who you and I have had a conversation about, like, how even is the business run, right? Like, is it very much dedicated to credit union model? And you can say that model historically has been one that's operated on net interest margin, right? And then there are times where we've had to shift and change some of that. And then I've been in other organizations where we don't really worry about that. We're going to worry about all of the other income associated with the business model, right? And so I think I found for me that opportunity looks like saying no. And I say that because it seems counterintuitive. I'm the kind of person who has a notebook of ideas. I'll just say pages. I told this to the team the other day, and they were like, now I want to know what's in the notebook. I'm very calculated about when I deliver a new idea, because I believe the greatest opportunity is in capacity. And I didn't always feel that way personally. I'm the kind of person who puts in 60 hours a week, who loves my work. And Tracy Kenyon and I have had this conversation. I live to work. I love to work. I have joy in coming into work every day. And organizationally, we have to recognize, though, that there is a bar, like a bar to what creates a really strong culture where people want to contribute in a way that is meaningful to them. And I have found in the last year that probably the way I see opportunity is by saying no. Where am I going to talk to the team about? What do I spend my time talking about with all of them, right? Like even in like that as the simplest example. And then where do I expect them to be reporting back, right? Like where are we talking about creating? There's a fluidity that happens when capacity is right at about 90 to 100%, I think, right? Sometimes people want to go a little bit higher, but for me, I think that's been how I've seen that evolve. And it's not saying that the world isn't changing fast, because it is. It is increasingly changing faster and faster. It's not that the business model isn't changing, because it is, right? You all would be the first to sort of testify, I think, what you've seen out in the market and how things are different today than they were 15 years ago. But I believe in people, hard and fast. I believe in people, and the people is not the work. The people do the work of the organization, and recognizing that there are constraints around that time.
I think you really touch on something that is so important, especially with like having the notebook, right? And all of the ideas. Because I know that's like, I had a monkey mind that just would fire ideas at 4:00 in the morning in Slack. And I was like, oh, I got to stop doing this, right? And it's probably part of the reason that we have a CEO to filter out all my monkey mind. But now just Greg has to deal with it. Lauren had to deal with it before that. But knowing what to say yes to and knowing what to say no to, and at the right time, because whether it's Zealyst or CUInsight or First Responders Credit Union or Navy Federal Credit Union, we all have limited resources, whether that's people or money. So how do you prioritize what comes out of the notebook?
So I did this thing, right, where I asked the team, and I want to tell you why I've learned this, I think, for myself, because I asked the team to evaluate me, which is always really fun to do. and to give me some feedback. And some of the feedback they gave me is we love everything that you're talking about, but we don't know if you're telling us to do it right now or you're telling us to do it next month. Or
that was a big struggle that I always had.
Yeah. It's like,
no expectation, right? Like they didn't know what.
Yeah. And I said, oh, I thought I was being super clear about that, right? So like, then it got me to the, I thought I was like, this is for the next iteration of our strategy. I would like to understand where we can explore more around this area. Could you help me do some research on blah, 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 right? And for me, this is like the most fun assignment, right? Like, I'm like, oh yes, let's explore and research and do all this fun stuff together. And the feedback that I got was like, yeah, yes, and which one of these things is now? And that's the reason I started, focus is something, right, for an organization. By the time you get sick of it, right, saying it's the first time the person sitting and talking to members hears about it for the first time and actually has this aha moment. And I don't know if it's necessarily a prioritization, but I know that there are things, and I feel really lucky about this too, because I know a lot of CEOs don't have this opportunity. I know who I'm talking to. I have no concerns about who I'm speaking with. The first responder is the first responder is the first responder. I am not a community credit union. I'm very lucky in that way. And so I feel like I actually get a chance to say no more, or I know what's important more for first responders because I understand that life and I've sort of been in it now for a year, but also lived my life up until this point as a first responder family. And so I'm not answering your question super clearly, Randy, but the priority is the part for me that I feel like I've just tried to hone it and maybe not say no, but this thing right now, this very thing.
You're right. Your notebook probably resonates with Jill and I a lot, right? I think all three of us are people that thrive in that change and the seeing opportunities, and the new excites us. Sometimes what we feel is an opportunity can feel uncertain to others, say on our team. So how do you bring people along with you, making sure that it's just not like you're looking back and you're like, oh crap, nobody's with me on this one.
So I asked a colleague about this the other day. So I would love to hear your opinions about this too, like how you do this. But I asked a colleague about this the other day, and one of them, they reminded me that a strategy is really about vetting. Right. And it's like testing and vetting. And so if I have one of these ideas that I think is simply spectacular, I try to explain it as in context as much as I think I know about it at that point. Here's a body of research, or here's some things that I've learned. Here's what some of our member data says. I think that this is really interesting. And then I give them permission to poke holes in it. Tell me where it's not going to work, please. And that is, I think, a little bit different than saying buy into this thing. Maybe I said I over-index on enthusiasm a little bit. It's help me poke holes in this thing before we even try to put any dollar on it. Is there real context, and does it resonate in terms of relevance to you about what we're trying to do here? And I don't think I have it exactly right yet. Maybe I'm getting there and there's more for me to explore around that, but I like to build things with people. So while my idea starts there, I very often have times where my idea is not my idea in the end. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, it was not the bright, shiny thing in my notebook. This is not way better because someone else made it better.
I think that's so important, though, what you're talking about, to actually help people feel ownership of what's happening. If you come in and you bestow this change upon people, they may say, well, if I want to keep my job, I have to do what Danielle says. But that's not the same thing as them feeling like they actually have ownership over that they feel like, well, we created this thing together, instead of it being we are supporting Danielle's pet projects from the notebook. And so that what you're talking about feels to me like a way to actually help people own what comes out of that too.
Yeah, that feels icky, right? Doesn't it? Go do this thing. Gross. No, thank you.
The poking holes was something that I talked about a lot as we were building CUInsight. Is I would always tell our team to poke holes. And after a while, they got really good at it. I kind of had to switch it up to say, okay, we need to take the whole poking holes though a little one step further. What do you think would be better? Or, kind of that next why question, okay, you were right. You found the hole. Now, is that terminal? is there something like come with the idea as well? And I think that kind of leads into Jill, what you said, like creating ownership then at that point too, because now the notebook idea or the monkey mind idea is no longer, it's a much better idea now that it's out in the world with other people's help.
That's such an interesting next step to that thinking, because what I was going to say is, hey, you can put this idea out there and tell people to poke holes in it. And if they don't trust you, they're going to look at it and say, it's perfect. Everything you do is great. Because if there are consequences to poking holes in your ideas, like they're just going to tell you everything is brilliant, like the whole emperor's new clothes thing, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side to that, though, if people are like overwhelmed by change, resistant to change, and you put a new idea out and they poke so many holes in it, you can't move something forward. That's also a challenge with that. So I was going to say, well, it's always a gift if people are willing to poke holes. But I think there is this, and then not just poke holes, but figure out how to move, like to take it forward, to build something better on that. And that is a great, so Danielle, I'm curious with Randy pointing that out, like when you get to the point where it's not just poke holes to shut it down so we don't have to do new things, but it's poke holes to improve it so that we can do better things. How do you help people turn that mindset?
Isn't this like this is the best part of leadership in my mind? My favorite part of being a leader in an organization is growing more leaders. That's like my very favorite thing. I know like some people thrive because, they really love the strategy part, or they really love, the operational part or whatever, like whatever your gift is, right? I love the people side of the work. It is my most favorite part of doing work. That is both a strength and a weakness for me. And I think over time I've learned how to work through that. Again, we talked about over-indexing on enthusiasm and maybe empathy sometimes, but I've found that deep care and commitment to people and being real honest about when you experience something that's not going well in a relationship with another leader, how do you like kind of stand up and go like, this is missing, like this, like I see you doing this, but not necessarily this. And how do we talk about why this next thing is really important? I think are the best conversations I've had in my entire career. They generally are really, really tough. They're generally really tough. And probably the most progress I've seen is when I've done it and just been real honest about and direct about, this is what real care looks like. And because I care about you, I want to see you do this next part better. And you'll be better because this next part is better. And I'll be better, right? Like, don't think I haven't looked at myself and said, what am I not doing? And this is not going the way that I thought it should, right? Like, I think, and that's the sign of, poking holes and getting to the next idea is like, hey, I hear you. And now you've got this part, right? Like you've got that. Now, how do we make the next leap to like, where do you bring your ideas? Because I also get excited when someone comes with a new idea. Like I've been in rooms where now at this moment in my career, everyone's looking at me to have all of the ideas, which is totally fair. And I think it's like, how do you plant curiosity in that room? I think that's sort of maybe what you're like getting at, Jill, is like, how do you plant curiosity in the room? And not just one time, but like, how does it become part of your repertoire of tools?
We talk often about like this trait of curiosity as being something that we love it in other people. We play it in ourselves. I think we've both talked about how it's one of the strengths that we hold as individuals that kind of make us who we are in different ways and with different styles, certainly. But it's that curiosity that has created a career path that I've followed in my career for sure too.
And I actually think if we think about like the next iteration of credit unions and what the industry sort of becomes, Randy, I feel like there's this, probably the thing that limits us as an industry is this pack thinking that we have sometimes. It's like the pack and like, how do you bring imagination back to and make it okay to have imagination in the business world, right? Because we tend to be very risk averse, right? And we've seen instances where not having enough of that is a struggle for the organization. But maybe that is like one of our biggest constraints as an industry going forward, or our biggest risks is like, are we willing to use that reimagining of something that we've known to work for so long and to be something more?
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think and we've all heard it, and I think it's made us all cringe when it's like, but that's how we've done it. That's us. I mean, this is who we are. And it's like, well, we're different. We've grown up and the world's changed around us. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a direction that I want to leave here because it was sticking in my mind from something that you just said a few minutes ago, because I know it too. And I know it's something that Jill talks a lot about, but this idea that, like, when you were talking about you love the people side of leadership, so generally the joy side, that's the things we love are what bring us joy. So that's, if we, as leaders, if we can do more of that, we probably enjoy what we're doing even more. Now that you are the CEO, have you like kind of looked at then the rest of your leadership team to say, okay, this is the part I love doing, but I need some really good people to do these parts that doesn't mean you're not good at them, but they quite honestly might not bring you as much joy. So how have you, I guess, looked at your strengths, but then also looked at the flip side of that and said, but this is where I need some really good people because maybe it's not my strength. And maybe I don't want it to be my strength, quite honestly.
I feel like I'm so honest with myself about this. And Jill was really honest with me in my interviewing process. Like, she was like, can you think about how you would answer this question? I think that's a gift. If you can find someone in your life who's like, I see that you are really good at this thing, you should absolutely focus on that. But you should be prepared to think about how you're going to handle this other stuff that maybe you really suck at. And Jill didn't use the word that you really
I definitely did not use the word suck.
Jill's just shaking her head. No one can see this. She's like, I did not say that.
Then it comes with a good, strong, long look in the mirror, right? Like, yeah, these are the things that I am not good at. And by the way, I do not want to be good at. One of you said trust earlier. Jill, I think it was you. You said like trust, like that is the thing. I think when you walk into a new organization or you start one, from both of your perspectives, is like, who are you going to trust to tell you how it really is? And how do you build that into the approach of your leadership team? I think that there are definitely things that I know I'm not great at. And, I probably, like, years ago when I was in the filling program, the I3 program, they tell you, they do your risk tolerance. They tell you what your risk tolerance is. And like, they put it on a scale. And like, I think it was out of 10 and mine was like a 9.8. Like, I have a very high risk tolerance. So especially when you think about, I've done some really probably fun things in my personal life that, others probably wouldn't do. But the side of that I love is that there are people in this organization who have, that is their jam. Like, I hate detail. I hate it. I despise it. It is rough. I am so lucky to have people here who love it and who will say, like, I don't even have to tell them. Like, I can say, here are the things, can you take a look at this? And here are the things maybe to look for. And they're like, well, I looked for those things, but then I also saw this thing here that you should probably pay some attention to because that one is off. And I say the same thing to the team. If you want me to look at something, can you tell me where you're asking me to look for? Because I'm not going to have the tolerance for this like 100-page document that you send to me. Like, where are the nuggets you really want me to pull out? Do you feel like sometimes it's obvious to me who those people are? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, doesn't it surprise you when you find someone new who, like, you were like, oh, I didn't know you were like that. I've experienced you in this way for so long, but maybe you put them in a new role or you put them outside your organization and now they're a consultant to you in a different way. Are there times where you've been surprised about, oh, I thought I knew this about this person, but really they showed up in a different way for me this time, and thank goodness they did?
That's an interesting thing. What immediately pops into my mind with this is, and I think you've had the chance to get to know my colleague Sierra maybe a little bit with it. And, I knew Sierra was an employee at a credit union that we worked with. She was a branch manager there. And before I hired her the first time to come in and brought her in kind of thinking she would really help be like project manager, kind of like arrange parts of things on that, which to me is more of that detail oriented, and she's great at that. And in not too long, she surprised me with not just being detail oriented, but being really strategic as well. And so like coming in like, oh, like she's not just here moving around like the furniture. She's got a vision for the blueprints of what the house looks like in that style of it. And so I think what I saw in that is, and maybe this is what you're talking about, you put somebody in a different role and they grow to fill that role, or like if
or
you
they
have
don't.
them in a
One of the two.
well, yeah, I guess so. Randy's new hobby is gardening, and so what it makes me think about is if you put the plant in a pot this size, you know how big that plant's going to grow. But if you put the plant in a pot this size, sorry, we don't have video. There are different gestures indicating different pots right now, and so then the plant grows bigger, and like. People can be similar to that. When you open up the field for people, their capacity can expand in that. And you can be absolutely like surprised at like, oh, there are these strengths we hadn't tapped yet, or we hadn't had the chance to explore. And that's one of my favorite things about the work we do is we can go and really help organizations discover like latent talent that might be hidden somewhere in the organization that when given the opportunity and the right conditions, really does grow and expand. So
I think that's incredible too, right? Because you can sort of test different assignments, right? Like when you start to see gifts in people. And, I think we talk a lot about training in this industry, and I'm going to send you to this conference or this conference. But one of the best ways I felt like to sort of get the most out of people is to give them something different to do and see how it ends up, right? Is like, what do we want to talk about after this happens? And most of the time I feel like they shine, people are hungry for opportunity.
Yeah, I think stretch assignments are like absolutely the best when you talk about like career development. And so many of our credit unions are small. There's not a ton of places to like put somebody on a different career matrix or career ladder, but giving one stretch assignment within something can absolutely give those opportunities for development that moves people toward eventual advancement. True.
Absolutely.
I want to be respectful of time here, but I did want to make sure we spent a lot of time on like what we've learned, kind of like that looking backwards. But as we look forward, and Danielle, you started to talk about this as a kind of our movement as a whole, but I had some other things I still wanted to ask you about. So I didn't want us to get done too quick here. But what opportunities, you've settled in? Well, all three of us, I think, have a pretty good handle, blimp level on our movement as a whole. But what opportunities kind of excite you the most over the next few years, whether it's at First Responders Credit Union? I'm getting used to saying that. Or even for our movement, as you were touching on, I think, before, about the curiosity side of all of us.
I'll just say a couple of things. And a few years ago, I wrote an article, I think, about community credit unions. And by no means is this a dig at anyone. So please, that's not what I'm saying. I really think the only way that we win is by being relevant. And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? Like we can talk about AI, right? Or data or all of the technology side, which is so important to our movement. I think if you don't know who you're talking to, and you don't know why they matter to your organization, and the people on your team don't know why they matter to your organization, like, what are we really doing here? And I think that's the most critical question for us to answer as an industry. And I don't think it can be the same for all of us. I don't think the answer can be the same for all of us. So we have to have really great examples of relevancy across the industry in many ways. And it can't just be like, oh, yeah, we're all going to implement AI to reduce back office operations. Yeah, we probably will, but to what end? Like, to what end? Right? And that is an opportunity, but it is not the outcome. I think we shortchange projects and go like, yep, we did it. And great for us. Now we're where everybody else is. That's not the way that consumers really think about us. And sometimes they don't want to think about us, to be quite frank. Like, it's like the last thing they want to be thinking about in their day. They'd rather be thinking about their family. And so, I say that in terms of opportunity, just to be slightly critical, is I think we're going to have to reimagine. We're not going to be able to use AI to come up with our strategies. Maybe that's a great way to say it. Like, every time I talk to a new partner, they're really interested in telling me how they're using AI. I'm like, great, awesome. That is awesome.
You know what's funny about that is it's reminding me of like one of my pet peeves for years was credit unions going like publicizing that they just got digital banking. And it was like, you shouldn't publicize that because people should assume you always had it. You know, it was like, that was 10 years ago. No. And I think and I'm seeing it too, where it's every partner, everybody's talking about how they're using AI. And it's like, to me, that's starting to feel like if people came in and were like, I use Microsoft Excel. Well, we know you're using these tools, right? We have email. You know, I mean, like, okay, great. We all are using it. A new pet peeve of mine, I guess. So.
I think we should have more pet peeves. Can we?
Yeah.
And can we talk about them? I mean, we really challenge what we think is real and honest conversation, because that is the hard part, right? We always go, oh yeah, that's great that we're doing that.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent. Jill, I think you had something to say.
No, I was just going to say 2 months ago, I was at the Maryland, D.C. Credit Union Association annual meeting, and they did a panel, and it was really about like using AI. And Mike Wilson from Members First in Pennsylvania and Becky Smith from APG in Maryland were on the panel, and they were talking really openly about how they're using AI in their organizations. And there was an audience question about like, wow, you're so willing to just share your strategy to give this information over. And they were like, let's be very clear. AI is not our strategy. AI is a tool we're using to deliver on our strategy, but our strategy is still about how we're serving our members, the member experience we're delivering in that side of it. And I think, Danielle, that's what people get so excited and we're using this tool. Okay, great. I don't care. And it comes back to your members don't care about your loan. They care about the house you can get them into. And we make so many mistakes in talking about like, ooh, our process is so innovative and cutting edge or convenient or whatever. Like nobody cares about the process. They care about the end that it helps them get to. And I think, so just to affirm that idea, as we're looking to the future, I believe we do make a mistake as an industry that we get so spun up about the process or the tool we're going to use and not so focused. There's a lot of conversation about financial well-being for all, and I love it, and it's important. But if that's the end we're trying to get to, we need to be talking more about real-life consumer experiences and what they need for us, and less about how are we going to use AI to enable financial education or something. Because it goes back to that, like nobody wants financial education. They want, the ability to thrive at the end of it.
Yeah. And like, right. Like that is like, when you have money on your mind, it's not the best time in your life. Like,
no,
that's not it. You're not living your best life in that moment when money's not.
Yeah. Money itself is not the end, right?
No.
It's like, so. Okay. That's probably not like that opened up a whole nother conversation. Randy's like, that was meant to be like the last question.
No, we got one more, but this is what I love about the podcast. We just kind of, we go where it takes us. And we told Danielle that beforehand. So see, we weren't lying.
and I am never one who's short with words. So that's my fault.
No. These are our favorites. So the kind of this closing question, though, because we've talked about, earlier we talked about recognizing opportunities. I think along the way we've talked about that if we didn't directly, I think the whole conversation's been about like creating momentum, whether it's for our credit union or our movement, right? And then how to bring people along. If we bring it all back to the idea of opportunity, like and when opportunity shows up, whether it's created or it's found, what do you think there are a lot of people that listen to the podcast who would someday like to be sitting in an office like yours, right? They want to be the CEO. And then there's a lot of CEOs that are obviously listening as well. If you could share like one last thing with whether it's a future CEO or future leader or a current one out there who's like, oh yeah, I really need to be thinking about that. What would your one takeaway be today?
I think one of the things that maybe has always settled with me in this seat is, and maybe it's because I'm doing some recruiting work with Zealyst right now, and we talk about this, but I would say remember that your home will find you. And that is part of, I think, sometimes we get tied up in like, I want this seat, I want this seat, I want this seat. And it's important to love the home that the seat is in. And that was something I learned along the way, thanks to some great coaches like Jilly. But that is maybe the hardest. I think when you're going through the process, it's the hardest thing to remember.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Jill, any final thoughts from you?
I just echo that so much to what Danielle's saying. And it's probably the thing I hear more than anything else from first-time CEOs who come back to me later and say, I don't think there's anything that you could have said to me that would have made me turn down the opportunity, but I probably should have paid some more attention to really what my non-negotiables were in that process too. So Danielle, thank you so much. This was fun. I absolutely love the idea, the conversation we had today, recognition of like, we've got to make these opportunities out there. And as leaders, we have the opportunity to create those conditions for our teams to have the opportunities as well. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your curiosity and letting us dig into that. And it's been a great episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll spend another hour somewhere else with you both anytime.
I was just going to say, this is just too much of a fun conversation. So thank you, Danielle. We appreciate you. And thank all of you for joining us. Until next time, be well, friends. You all are the best part of the CUInsight experience, and we can't wait to see you soon.
Thanks again to Trellance for sponsoring this episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast. To find out more about Trellance, visit trellance.com.